All right, jacked up December 17th, 2024, our final episode of the podcast before Christmas. So Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, all that good stuff. It's an exciting time. College football playoffs, they're just around the corner. The first 12-team playoff in the history of the college football landscape is set and ready to go, but not just these games are what teams have to worry about, unfortunately. In addition to preparing for playoff games and preparing for other bowl games, teams have to worry about A, keeping their players, B, going out and finding other players, and those players, particularly quarterbacks, have to find new homes. It's a mess. I think we can all agree upon that, and we're going to talk about it with Penn State beat reporter Joe Smeltzer of Nittany Sports Now. Joe, I wanted to bring you on the episode, number one, because you're a good friend of mine. Haven't had you on yet. Happy to have you. But I think a lot of the focal point of the portal discussion around college football is circulating around Penn State right now because of Beau Pribula and his situation. And it's a unique one. I feel like it's one of those situations where you can't really blame him. The system is really just what's at fault here.
Yeah, and thanks for having me on. I'm glad to be on. But you hit the nail right on the head there. You can't blame Beau because obviously with Drew Aller coming back, he wasn't going to get a chance to be Penn State's starting quarterback, barring unforeseen events next season. So you can't blame him for wanting to move on. You can't blame James Franklin, even though technically they would have been allowed to have Beau Pribula play through the playoff run while in the transfer portal, because James Franklin needs to have his guys focused. And when not only your second string quarterback, but a guy that you're using in every game, regardless of whether Drew Aller's good to go or not, you have to have that guy sharp. You can't have him, thinking about finals, because it's easy to forget these guys are still taking final exams. Thinking about that, thinking about where he's going to go, thinking about if he should visit places and leave State College in the middle of a playoff run, then have to kind of teleport himself between college visits and going back to practice and whatnot. And not to mention, Beau would have to kind of be reconciling with the fact that he's going to be leaving this, not only the team he's been with for 3 years, but his boyhood program. A guy from York, Pennsylvania, grew up a Penn State fan, dreamed of playing football at Penn State, and having to think about the fact that he'd be leaving Penn State while still balancing his future and also the present of having to be focused in the college football playoff run. It just would have been too much. I think James Franklin and Beau both understood that. And James Franklin even said that the Sunday afternoon practice that they had, Beau announced his intentions Sunday night. He was practicing, and it was obvious that he just wasn't all there. And I think at that point, they decided this just isn't going to work. And as Beau said in his farewell letter to Penn State, he really didn't feel like he had a choice. And as James said the next day, he didn't want to leave Penn State like this, but because of how things are set up, it just kind of had to happen that way.
Yeah, and the writing was on the wall. I think a lot of people were shocked. Like, I was shocked. And then when the news came out the next day that Drew Aller is coming back for his senior season, you're like, okay, it makes sense. That's why Beau entered the transfer portal. The biggest problem with the whole situation is that it's open right now, and it's like free agency. And there isn't another professional sports league in which free agency is happening in the middle of the postseason and in the middle of playoff runs. It's ridiculous. It's ass backwards. And there's really no sign of it stopping anytime soon because nobody seems to be in charge of it.
Yeah, and that's almost verbatim, Jack, what SMU's coach Rhett Lashley said on his Zoom call today. It's the only game where free agency exists during the season, and it just makes life miserable for everybody, And I think not only is it hard for guys like Beau Pribula, it's hard for the coaches to have to maintain their roster while focusing, some of them focusing on college football playoff runs. It's also bad for the fans because, as exciting as transfer portal talk can be, Penn State fans should be getting hyped for the SMU game. Ohio State fans should be getting hyped for Tennessee. And when you're talking about not only guys leaving, but for example, Penn State added a receiver from USC, Kyron Hudson, yesterday. He's a good player. I think he'll do good things for Penn State with Drew Auerbach, but that's not somebody that people should be talking about. Wow, Penn State's about to play its first college football game ever in front of the hometown fans of Beaver State.
Yeah.
So I think it just cheats everybody. And I think the way to fix it is, number one, the NCAA needs to stop pretending like college football players are normal students, because they aren't. And they would say, well, the reason we have the portal window set up like this is because when these guys choose their new schools, they got to enroll for classes. They got to be there the first day of classes. They're not normal students. Everybody knows that. Stop pretending. And the second point, and this is what James Franklin said yesterday, college football needs a commissioner badly. I don't know why every conference has a commissioner, but the overall sport can have a commissioner. That doesn't make sense. And now James did say he wanted the commissioner to be somebody unbiased towards any conference. Yeah. And I don't know how that's going to work, because everybody has an alma mater, right? Are you going to stop a guy from being the commissioner of college football because he has a degree from Ohio State or grew up in Ann Arbor? I don't know how that's going to work, but you need somebody overseeing the whole sport, like you have Tony Petitti overseeing the Big Ten, like you have your Mark in the Big 12, Sankey in the SEC, and I'm kind of blanking on the ACC guy, but yeah, you need to have an overall governor of college football. So I think if we stop pretending like these guys are normal students, and if we actually get somebody to run the sport and be a face of the sport the way every professional sport has, because this is basically a professional sport right now, I think those two things would go a long way towards solving this problem and making the sport better for it.
Yeah, and to get back to Pribula's situation, and because he's a quarterback, like, you've got a kid that's got 10 rushing touchdowns in his career. He comes in the Wisconsin game and plays lights out. So he's shown the ability to play the position, and all facets of it, at the biggest stage in the Big Ten, being able to throw the ball efficiently, being able to run the ball, be a dual threat quarterback. So he's got the resume. He has the ability, I think, to be another Power 4 starter somewhere else. But there's only one starting quarterback on every Power 4 team. And teams that are looking for the portal to go get a quarterback, there's only a finite amount of those guys. So if Pribula were to stick around and wait around, his opportunities might go away. Like, it's so frustrating to say out loud, just the whole process of it. And other positions and other players that play other positions might have it a little bit easier. But if you're a quarterback, man, and you want to start at the Division I level next year and be in the transfer portal, it's got to always be at the forefront of your mind at this stage in the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And James Franklin hits home to every player. You got to prepare like you're the starter. And that's just a general coaching cliche. But yeah, it's not easy to be a backup quarterback, having to do basically all the work that a starter has throughout the week, and then getting only a limited amount of the glory in Beau Pribula's case, or in Devin Brown's case at Ohio State, probably none of the glory. You're just on Saturdays, which is supposed to be your day. You're just kind of, sitting the bench, and you got to be mentally locked in, but you're not going to be the guy they show on SportsCenter later. So it's really hard, and Beau has earned a chance to start at another school, and he has some pretty prominent suitors right now. Missouri's looking at him. I don't know how it would work a quarterback playing at Iowa. They haven't had a lot of success offensively, but Iowa's another option. Maybe West Virginia, although I think if Martial stays there, that'd be a good guy to move forward with under Rich Rod. But Beau would be a guy that you would think would fit what Rich Rodriguez likes to do. So that's another interesting option. There's some group of 5 options too, but yeah, this guy is clearly good enough to start somewhere. I don't think if you go 11-13 in the second half at night on the road in a Big Ten stadium, you can play. And I don't know how successful Beau's going to be. I'm not predicting him to have a lengthy NFL career or anything like that, but he's certainly, earned a chance to start somewhere. And it's obvious that he wasn't going to get that at Penn State with Drew announcing that he was going to come back. And even without Drew Aller, I don't know if Beau Pribula would have been the locked on 100% starter for next season.
Were you shocked to find out Drew Aller was coming back next year? And if not, when did you kind of get the hunch that maybe him returning next year was a possibility? Because at one point this season, I think a lot of people thought he would have a chance to be a first-round pick in April.
Yeah, I wasn't shocked, Jack. I had been hearing for probably since the week of the Oregon game that there was a good chance that he was going to stay at Penn State. I didn't hear it from anybody that I could run and report it with. I just kind of heard it around. How we have to be with sourcing, but yeah, if he wasn't getting first round grades, I think the grade he had was on the third round, and I feel that Drew felt he could do better. He talked with his family about it. I'm sure he talked with Brad Mandler, his personal quarterback coach, about it, and obviously the Penn State coaching staff too. But I think probably since the start of December, I felt that it was inevitable that Drew was gonna come back. I had been talking with people as recently as Monday morning before Pete Thamel broke the news, and my idea was that he was going to wait a little bit to announce it. That didn't end up happening, but overall, I wasn't too surprised to hear that Drew was coming back, and I think it makes sense for him, especially if Penn State is going to help him out in the receiving game. They got Kyron Hudson from USC, who had 400 yards in an offense that had a few other weapons at receiver and had instability at the quarterback position with Miller Moss ending up getting benched. I feel that they're going to add at least one more weapon for him. And if Nick Singleton comes back, which I think is a possibility too, that's going to give him plenty to work with offensively. So, yeah, I feel that Drew's a guy that knows he could be a first-round pick. I don't think he would have been if he declared this year, and that's why I feel that staying another season is ultimately the best call for him. We'll see if it ends up that way, but for now, I think it makes a lot of sense, and I wasn't too surprised by it.
Yeah, do you think that all of those reasons that you mentioned, the supporting cast, maybe some potential additions, is one of the reasons why Andy Kotelnicki might have turned Ren Baker down for the West Virginia job?
That's a good question. Yeah, I definitely think so. I feel that Andy knows he's in a pretty good spot at Penn State. This is what's turned into a perennial top 10, if not top 5 program. And this offense, even with the shortcomings at receiver, even with Nick Singleton not really being 100% for a portion of the season, was very good for the most part. And I feel that something kind of tells me that somebody told Andy Kotelnicki, whether it was James Franklin or whoever, that the West Virginia job might not have been the best thing for him right now, because obviously there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen there with what Ren Baker wanted, what the donors wanted, what the local government even wanted. So my feeling is that James Franklin told Andy Kotelnicki something like, hey, we know you want to be a head coach. You're going to be a head coach one day. This is not the right opportunity, and this is not the right time. So Kotelnicki said that it was a no-brainer to stay at Penn State. I don't believe that. I don't think he would have taken multiple interviews with WVU if that had been the case. But yeah, I think that Andy's pretty happy at Penn State, and I feel that another good season next year with Drew Aller back, with some receivers, at least one receiver added to the fold, with Singleton potentially coming back, and still some pretty solid tight end options even without Tyler Warren. I think that he could boost his coaching stock dramatically next season. And yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense for him to stay a second year, because that's what Manny Diaz decided to do. And obviously Duke football is in a pretty good spot right now too.
Yeah, they just got the number one quarterback out of the portal at the time, the kid from Tulane.
Yep.
I guess that's my next question. Like, has James talked about what goes into managing the portal, navigating it at this time of year, in addition to getting your team ready to keep playing football games? Because there's got to be just an absolute cluster of, I got to figure out how we got to keep this kid. This kid's interested in the portal. But we have a team meeting at 9 a.m. and practice later this afternoon, and we've got a freaking college football playoff game to worry about in a couple of days.
Yeah, he has talked about it. I think that James's main focus, this is what he tells us anyway, his main focus is SMU,
Yeah.
saying SMU 20 times. But yeah, there's I think there's certain members of the staff that probably have more of an emphasis on, recruiting new talent / re-recruiting the guys that are currently on the roster and all of that. So I think they handle that. I think Franklin's focus right now is on the football side of things. But I wouldn't be surprised if Penn State adds a so-called general manager that's in charge of, managing NIL, kind of selling recruits on Penn State and selling recruits to stay at Penn State and meeting whatever financial needs. I think face of the NIL department at Penn State would go a long way, and I wouldn't be too surprised if they end up adding somebody in that capacity. But yeah, I feel that James's focus right now is on SMU, and from what we've heard, there's other people on the staff that are more focused on keeping everything together beyond this week's game.
Yeah, I feel like the logical way that teams can kind of cope with the NIL and the transfer portal times, right? Like, to me, within the next year or two, all of the Power Four programs should have a general manager to spearhead that effort. I mean, Bill Belichick, despite him having experience being a general manager in the NFL, brings aboard Michael Lombardi to assist in those efforts at North Carolina, right? Didn't Adrian Wojnarowski, isn't he sort of a GM at Lehigh or
St. Bonaventure?
St. Bonaventure. Yeah. I mean, like that's the next logical step. And I know Ryan Day's been asked about it at Ohio State. I wouldn't be surprised if Rich Rodriguez went that route at WVU in the next couple of years, because that's, to me, the only way at this point that teams can kind of cope with that and help them advance in that department.
Yep, absolutely. And I'd be surprised if Penn State didn't hire a guy to be the GM of that NIL operation. Now, is it going to be a guy that's known more in like the financial world? Maybe not a Letterman. Who knows? Is it going to be somebody like I don't know if it's going to be LeVar Arrington, because his son's going to be on the team soon, and that might cause a bit of a mess. But other alumni, Kajana Carter, he's been involved in their NIL efforts. Is he a guy that would want to take the job? Would a guy like Michael Maudy? I don't know. The one GM I can think of off the top of my head, you mentioned Michael Lombardi, but Alonzo Highsmith at Miami, I know he was in that role. I believe he still is, but that's obviously a big name in the history of Miami football. So, yeah, I feel that adding a Letterman would make sense, somebody that's played college football before. And this is really where Pat Kraft can shine, because Penn State hired Pat Kraft largely for his fundraising abilities and kind of to take Penn State into the 2020s. I think he's done a good job so far. The funding for Beaver Stadium's renovations is coming along pretty good, but this would be just another chance for Pat Kraft to really kind of show what he could do in getting the right personnel to keep Penn State pushing forward as we're approaching, believe it or not, year 4 of the NIL era.
Yeah, I also wouldn't be surprised if Pitt is one of those teams that adds a general manager in the offseason for a couple of reasons. Number one, their new athletic director, Alan Green, comes from the SEC. That's a different breed of football than the ACC. There's no doubt about that. And, you talk about having a name attached to the university in that department. Pitt's got 2 guys. They've got Louis Riddick, who has interviewed for multiple NFL GM jobs the last couple of years. He's also, I believe he interviewed for the New York Jets job a couple of days ago. And Doug Whaley, who has been an NFL general manager before, was with the Steelers, was with the Buffalo Bills, and has interviewed for jobs since then. So I could see Pitt taking that route in the offseason, maybe not necessarily with one of those guys, but somebody, because it's what you have to do. Do you see any changes, Joe, coming to the NIL and the transfer portal dynamic in the next couple of years? Or is it one of those things where maybe nothing happens until you get a guy in there that can be a commissioner of college football to help police this thing?
Yeah, I would say, and maybe this is wishful thinking on my part, I would say the first step would be kind of pushing back the window in general, because I would hope that what's going on in this 12-team playoff is really going to be what makes people realize, hey, having free agency in the season is kind of ridiculous. So maybe we get the window pushed from December till after the season. I feel like that would be what happens first, and then after that, you could build on that and hire a commissioner. I
Yeah.
want to say that that's going to happen. I hope it does soon, but I don't know. It seems like this would have been common sense years ago when this whole thing started.
Because what's
Uh,
gonna be, because if it doesn't happen, what is going to happen is, so with the way that the college football playoff is constructed and a G6 team gets in, that's Boise State this year.
yep.
Boise State had Ashton Genty, a generational talent at running back, and he had his opportunities to leave, but he didn't. What's going to happen before it changes, in my opinion, is there's going to be that, smaller school G5 team that makes the college football playoff and has a stud quarterback, running back, whoever, and they'll be poached and they will enter the transfer portal before the college football playoff starts. And then that G5 team or whoever plays without that player and gets smoked. And that is not even close to fair to the school, but that's the way that the system goes. And if Ashton Genty hadn't, elected to stay at Boise State before, there's no reason why it couldn't have happened, because that he was approached at points in his career. And I believe Boise State's head coach said they had 13 guys that he called illegally were tampered with to get into the portal.
Yeah, and that type of stuff happens even at places like Penn State.
Yep.
Pat Kraft said last December, I want to say, that they had people approaching prominent football players. He wouldn't name the names, of course, but that was going on too. And I hope that, obviously the big thing with UNLV this year and their quarterback leaving like 4 games into the season. Hopefully we don't have to have a situation like that happen to a college football playoff team while they're getting ready for the playoff. That it shouldn't take something like that to make the NCAA realize that this isn't working. And I think it was important for James Franklin to say what he said. That's a guy that has a voice in college football. And, it's nice to hear kind of not to pick on anybody, but the coach of Washington State, for him to call out the transfer portal, that's one thing. But for James Franklin, who's one of the more prominent names in the sport, for him to say this is messed up, maybe that even goes a long way to people listening.
I agree. All right, Joey, before we let you go, the college football playoff this weekend. Penn State's at home against SMU. A lot of talk has been made about their path potentially to a semifinal or a national championship being a little bit easier than some others, i.e. Ohio State. How do you think Penn State matches up against SMU in this first round? How do you think that they could fare? And how do you look at this bracket overall? Do you have a prediction on maybe who you can see in the final game?
Yeah, to answer the SMU question first, Jack, I think Penn State matches up very well. I feel that SMU does have a good offense, second best in the ACC, but Penn State's defense just gave up 45 to Oregon. I don't think they're good. This unit is too good to have 2 bad games in a row, and I think that Tom Allen's going to correct what he needs to correct. And it's gonna SMU's gonna be on the wrong end of that. I like the way Penn State's defensive line matches up with SMU's offensive line. I think obviously Abdul Carter is a threat to wreck any game, and Denai Dennis Sutton is very dangerous as well. I think those guys are gonna feast on SMU's tackles, and then offensively, for Penn State offensively, SMU has the number 4 ranked run defense in the country, but they haven't faced a running game like Penn State's ranked in the top 20. So I feel that if Penn State could win the battle in the trenches against maybe the best defensive line in the country in Oregon, they'll be okay blocking against SMU. I like what Nolan Rucci has done at right tackle since Anthony Donko got hurt. He's a guy that played very well in Indianapolis, and I think he'll play very well again against SMU. And then most importantly, the 2 backs, Singleton and Allen, I think are the healthiest they've been all season, and I think are running at the best level they have all year. Both of them went for 100 yards against Oregon. That's only the second time that's happened. I think with those two, they did it against Bowling Green as well. But both of those guys are running at their best. And even with Beaver Stadium's field conditions being whatever they're going to be in December, we've never seen that. That's going to be interesting. But I think Penn State's going to be able to run the ball. And if they can't, for whatever reason, run the ball, SMU's pass defense is ranked 96th out of 130 teams. So I'm seeing a big day for Tyler Warren. Maybe Penn State's receivers gasp, even do something. They showed some promise against Oregon. Amari Evans had a 20-yard touchdown catch. Trey Wallace had a big touchdown reception and a few other plays, but so much has to go right for SMU to win this game, and this isn't even mentioning the fact that they're going to be they're a team from Texas that's going to be playing in central Pennsylvania in December on what's supposed to be a very cold day. That's not going to help either. They're one of the most penalized teams, I believe, in college football going into Beaver Stadium. That's not going to bode well, I don't think. So Penn State matches up very well. And then for the bracket in general, I do like them against Boise State. Against Notre Dame, that would be tough. Notre Dame or Georgia, although Georgia without Carson Beck, who knows? But I think it's going to be Penn State, Notre Dame in the Orange Bowl, and I really don't know who I'd pick there. But as of now, I would say the national championship game, a good bet for that would be Penn State and Texas. I think that Texas makes it as the 5 seed out of that bracket. And who knows? This is probably going to be revised as the weeks go on. But I like the way Texas plays football. I think that the only team they've lost to is Georgia, and Georgia now does not have Carson Beck. But yeah, that would be my pick right now.
How do you think Ohio State fares against Tennessee? A situation where they win at home and then fall to the top seed? Or do you think that Tennessee's got a chance at upsetting them in Columbus? You've seen Ohio State this year. You've seen them in the last several years as well.
Yeah, I don't know if I trust Tennessee to go in and win a big road game. They had a chance to do that against Georgia, and it didn't happen for them. They even on the road against Arkansas, an inferior opponent, it didn't happen for them then either. So I can't see this Ohio State team losing 2 in a row. I feel that, Ryan Day beats everybody but Michigan practically. And, they've had weeks to let the Michigan game sink in. I think that this is the type of team that's going to be better from that. I'm not saying they're going to win the national title or anything like that, but I like the way they match up against Tennessee. I think that that secondary with Ward and Denzel Burke and all those guys, I think they could limit that Tennessee passing game, which is Josh Heupel's bread and butter. So I like Ohio State in that game. And then Ohio State-Oregon was maybe the best game of this college football season. So a rematch of that at the Rose Bowl of all places, that's I can sign up for that.
Me too, man. Joe, check them out. Nittany Sports Now, nittanysportsnow.com. I appreciate you hopping on, man. We'll do it again soon. Have fun this weekend covering the game, and we'll talk soon, man.
All right, you bet. Thanks, Jack.